What's going on, YouTube peoples? It's that time of year. The time of year when you find out your older vehicle's air conditioning ain't blowing cold no more. We can't have that over here. Behind me is my brother's 2005 Dodge Ram with the Cummins diesel engine in it. And he found out this week that the air conditioner's not blowing cold. We had some warmer days earlier in the week. Today's not warm, it's about 70 degrees. But on those warm days, he found out it wasn't working. And then I told him, bring it over here. I can show you better than I can tell you. And that's what I'm gonna do today. And then I'm gonna go over some diagnostic procedures. Now, you may be able to fix the AC on your vehicle yourself. But even if you don't, there's some shiesty mechanics out there. So maybe at the end of this video, you'll know more what you're looking at, and you can tell if he's full of crap or not. Did you know that your air conditioner not working is the #1 cause of butt crack sweat? Now, the first thing you're going to want to do when you find out your AC quit is go to the store and buy one of these cans right here and just start shooting Freon refrigerant. I'm going to use them interchangeably. Yeah, just go ahead and start throwing it in there. No, don't do that. Don't do that. There's other things you need to check before you do anything to your air conditioning systems. It may not be low on Freon. First thing you got to do is find your compressor. Now, this one here is down on the bottom. But let me show you what a compressor looks like. Here's an example of an air conditioning compressor. You see it's got the lines running to it that run up to the dash, and some of them run up to the condenser on the front. I'll explain that later. Another one. AC compressor, another one. Another one. Another AC compressor. And you see this one don't work because it ain't even got a belt on it. And another one. Here's where the compressor is on this Dodge with the Cummins in it. And as you can, if you look right here in the middle, you see how that piece can turn? Like I'm turning it. So if the air condition is off, that middle piece shouldn't be turning, but when it's on and the engine's on, obviously the belt's gonna be spinning. When the air conditioning's on, that center piece should be turning. That's how you know if the clutch is engaged or not. So let's check and see if this one's coming on. Now you just saw that compressor clutch wasn't turning. Now, the next thing we got to do is to see if it's got power going to it. All right, I got my meter hooked up right here to this plug, and I'm gonna go crank the truck up and see if we're getting any voltage. So we saw the clutch isn't getting power. The next thing I'm gonna do is find out why. Now I'm gonna come right in here to this fuse box center, and fuse 16 is the one, which is that one. I'm gonna pull it out and check it. Fuse looks okay. We'll get my meter in here to check for power. Okay, now we know that the fuse is good. We know we're getting power to the fuse. The next thing we got to check is the relay. And the relay is going to be number 64, which is this one. Let's look at that relay diagram. And when that relay closes, it closes between 87 and 30, pins 87 and 30. So if you roll it over, you find 87 and 30, and then come down in here and find out where to check for power. Okay, with the truck running, you just saw that clip. We had power here. We got power here with the truck running, and that's this pin is the one that will turn the relay on when you look at the diagram, wherever it went. So we determined we had voltage in both of these places. So the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna jump this pin to this pin and see if the clutch will come on. The clutch just kicked on, I heard it. Okay, now, when I just jumped those two pins and heard that clutch come on, that's pretty much telling me that that relay's bad. So what I'm gonna do at this point is I'm gonna take one of these other relays, and it's probably gonna be the one for the fog lights, and I'm gonna swap it, and then I'm gonna tell my brother he needs to order a relay so he can get his fog lights back working. Oh, look at that, it's coming on down now. Popsicles and penguins and igloos and Eskimos, all kind of stuff flying out of these vents. So, we got the truck fixed. It's blowing out cold air. But what if that relay wouldn't have fixed it? What would we do then? The next thing I'd check in that case would be the pressure switch. And I'm gonna do a little doodle on the whiteboard to show you exactly how a pressure switch works. So let's take a look at the way a pressure switch works. This represents the low pressure line, and the pressure in that line, when it gets above a certain amount, will push against a spring right here, and it'll close the contact between power coming in and power going out towards the compressor clutch. So when your pressure drops, to keep the compressor safe, it will open that circuit. So if you do have a low freon charge or refrigerant charge, it will not work and it won't have power to the end. So the next thing you have to do after that is you have to put the gauges on it, find out if it's got enough pressure to close it. If it has enough pressure to close it and it's still not getting power to the compressor clutch, then you know you have a bad pressure switch. Let's get these gauges hooked up right here and talk about some pressures and the way pressure switches work and the way they act with the freon. Low side goes back here. You see, these things are kind of like quick connects like this. And you can't mix them up because the high side's bigger than the low side. High side being red, low side being blue. And then you front seat the valve. And repeat the other one. Now that I got it hooked up, see I got 70 pounds of pressure on the low side and 70 on the high side. That's because when the engine's off and the compressor's not turning, the pressure's equalized between the high and low sides. But you know that's enough right here. Most pressure switches cut off at like 25 in a 130 or 134A system. So you know it's enough. It should, if the pressure switch is good, it's got enough in there that it should kick it on. You just saw those pressures on those gauges, and they're going to cycle and go back and forth. Now if it's not real hot outside on a day like today, where it's around, today it's only like 68, 70 degrees, both pressures are going to be lower. And I'm going to put a chart over here somewhere that'll kind of give you a reference of what those gauges are supposed to look like. Now let's look at some different air conditioning systems on different cars and learn how the flow of refrigerant works. This will just give you, you can wrap your head around how that refrigerant flows through the system, and what it does will help you in diagnosing it. All right, so you can't see it down there, but we know the compressor's down there. You saw it earlier. This is the line that comes from the compressor. At that point, the refrigerant is being pressurized by the compressor, but it's in a gaseous form. Then it goes into this thing, these fins right here, and air goes across it. And it condenses down into a liquid form. It's still under high pressure, but it comes in a liquid form, and when it does that, it releases heat. And that part is called a condenser, because it condenses from gas down to liquid inside the system. Then it's in a liquid form, and it goes right down this line, and it comes back and goes back there to the firewall. And it's hard to see on this one, and I probably should have picked a better vehicle to start this off with. But anyway, it goes right there, and it hits a thing, in this case, called a fixed orifice tube. Now what that fixed orifice tube does is it's a restriction that restricts the refrigerant, and as it hits that restriction, it'll go in the evaporator. It turns back from liquid to gas. During that conversion from liquid to gas, it absorbs the heat out of the cab. So it gives you that cooling effect that we all love, and it prevents butt crack sweat. But after it has absorbed all that heat, then it comes through this thing right here called an accumulator. And that accumulator completes the conversion from liquid to gas of the refrigerant. So if there's any that gets through, because the compressor can't get liquid through it because it'll mess it up. You can't compress liquid, you can compress gas. So after that point, it goes through that accumulator, and then it returns back down to the compressor, and it all starts over again. But there's some things I want to note, because not all vehicles have fixed orifice tubes. Let's take a look at this Subaru for effect. You can see most of this stuff on it. So, compressor, see right there, H for high side. Comes right out, goes right down. It goes to the condenser that's hiding somewhere in there. And then comes out of the condenser and runs right back around and goes to the dash. This piece here is called an expansion valve. And if it has an expansion valve, it doesn't have a fixed orifice tube. Just for effect, here's another one. You can see my compressor hiding down here. This is on my R50 Pathfinder. This is the low side where it comes in. This is the high side, comes up to the condenser. And it has a thing on the high side called a receiver dryer. If you have a receiver dryer, then you know for a fact that you have an expansion valve in there. See the expansion valve, and this one you can't see it like you could on that Subaru. It's in the dash, and to replace it, you've got to take the dash apart and pull the evaporator out. Now let's take a look at this burb right here. The AC system on it doesn't work right this second. I'm gonna do a video on it later when I redo everything. But you can clearly see the low side lines and the high side lines. It comes over to the condenser right here. And then this is the evaporator box on this external. It sits under the hood actually, where the evaporator's in here. That's the pipe that goes to the evaporator. Well, that's the one that goes to it. This is the one that comes from it. This is called a accumulator, and it's just like the one that was on that Cummins over there. If you see this, you know you have a fixed orifice tube. If you see a can on the low side, it has a fixed orifice tube. If it has a can looking job on the high side, you know it has an expansion valve, whether you can see it or not. Now let's talk about this condenser where you can really see it on this truck. If you have a vehicle that the air conditioning cools great riding down the road, But when you pull up at a stoplight or you're sitting in a parking lot and it starts blowing warm out the vents, then you know that you probably don't have a refrigerant problem. You have a fan problem. You see that in there? When the car's sitting still, it can't get enough air across this guy right here, and it'll cause the pressure just to get too high, and it'll kick out on high pressure. You should also check your lines to see if there's a frosty spot, especially on your high side here. And if you see a frosty spot on your high side, that means pretty much you got a restriction in the line. And what it's doing is it's trying to do that pressure conversion that would normally happen in the evaporator in the line, and that can cause performance issues. Seeing some ice on the bottom of your accumulator down there is not the end of the world though. That usually means that it's just really doing a good job. But that's on the low side, so it's what's coming out of that evaporator. I hope I'm making sense. It's also not a bad idea to look around your connections and see if you see any oily spots. If you do, then you know you got a leak. And if you're too low on refrigerant, then your air conditioner's not gonna work. But that's about all I got for AC diagnosis. If you've got any questions or any, just leave them down in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. And hopefully you learned something about the air conditioning on your car today. And if you're not a subscriber, go ahead and smash that subscribe button, because I've always got something going on. I've always got new videos coming out with stuff like this. I want to thank everybody. If you watched this long, thank you. I got more videos coming up with my shenanigans and other nonsense. And hopefully you can get your AC blowing out, penguins and popsicles and everything else. And you can prevent the butt sweats this summer.